Alright, what's happening, y'all? I am super excited. This is your boy Rico from RicoScores, and man, the Commanders are interviewing everybody, all of the top guys. If you're a potential great GM, if you're a potential great head coach, the Washington Commanders are requesting to interview you as soon as possible. They're hitting the ground running. I'm super excited. We've already reached out to potential head coach in Michigan's Jim Harbaugh. We reached out to his agent. We've requested interviews with Lions offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn, Bears assistant GM Ian Cunningham, Browns assistant GM Glenn Cook. They reached out to my dogs Adam Peters and Alec Halaby, who I both really want, and many more. That's not just it. That's just the start. Also, Matt Miller said that the Commanders are a highly sought after job right now. We got to dive into all of that and more. This is probably the most optimistic video I have ever done for my Burgundy and Gold. I thought and I was hoping we'd be looking at a lot of the top candidates. Now it looks like we definitely are looking at the top candidates, and it's very likely that we hire a top candidate for GM and a top candidate for head coach. I'm super excited. Like pretty much almost all of the names, not all of them yet, and I'm gonna talk about the ones that haven't been mentioned yet that I still want us to also go and interview as well. But most of the top names that I wanted, we're looking at. I'm super excited, and of course I'm still working on a video breaking down all of the GM candidates, and we're going to do individual breakdowns for all of those guys. All of the top head coaching candidates, we're going to do individual breakdowns for all of those guys as well. But this video, we're just going to put everybody in one big pile and talk about why I'm so excited. And then we're going to take the time to do actual real breakdowns for each of these candidates later on. Well, actually very soon. But yeah, man, I'm super excited. I'm super energetic. I'm sorry if I go on any rants, but that's just the type of energy I'm having right now. I'm telling y'all, we're doing things not only the right way, but they're even exceeding my expectations beyond for what I hoped to come in to enter this off season with. I'm super excited, man. So yeah, man, before we dive into all of that, make sure you stiff arm that like button, stiff arm that subscription button, and stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you can stay updated on every little thing that the Burgundy and Gold have going on this entire off season. Again, I'm working on so many videos. I've already done 2 today. This will be the 3rd. I may do a 4th one tonight. You never know with all of this stuff going on, and I have so many video ideas. I mean, I have several screens and several windows within each screen with a whole bunch of video ideas. I'm still working on a mock draft. I wanted to do that soon, but now all of this stuff is moving that further back. I want to do like a final stats and rankings video so we could just go ahead and get it out the way. Let's do a review of everything that went down statistically for the Commanders this season and why we need all of this that we're doing this off season. I have so much content, but super busy. Stay tuned. If you want to get updates on everything the Burgundy and Gold got going on, make sure you subscribe, hit the bell next to that subscription button, and also the live streams are not stopping. Just because the regular season is ended does not mean the live streams will end, and I'm still going to be doing call-in shows. So we're going to do a call-in show on GMs that y'all may want. Y'all call in, you the viewer call in and voice your opinion on that. Head coaches, and then after we hire a GM and a head coach and all of that, we'll do call-in shows to allow y'all to voice your opinions on whether we made the right decisions or not. And we're gonna do call-in shows about free agency, call-in shows about the draft, all of that, because I feel like a lot of y'all deserve a platform. I feel like a lot of y'all guys are super smart and super opinionated, and y'all just haven't taken the time to make a YouTube channel for it, and I feel like y'all deserve a platform to voice y'all opinions as well. So make sure y'all stay tuned, and let's go ahead and get to this video. Let's get it. All right, so first of all, I want to talk about the fact that Matt Miller himself, no attachment to the Commanders at all. And if anything, sometimes it seems like he hates on the Commanders, but even he can admit that this is a very, very sought after job after considering new ownership group, projected salary cap space, and the number 2 overall pick in the draft, plus 5 picks in the top 100. That is crazy. This is coming again from a guy like Matt Miller that has no attachment, no affinity for the Commanders, no bias, nothing. This is just pure honest evaluation. Again, I did like a video breaking down ESPN. They like broke down how they rank the top 10 head coach and landing spots in the NFL, and somehow we rank 7th, and I pushed back on that. I explained in my video why we should arguably be number 1, but at the very least top 3. And Matt Miller is basically coming here and saying the same thing that I was saying, that like, man, this is very underrated. This could arguably be the most sought after spot for a really great, genius, masterminded GM and a really good head coach as well. One of the top guys at both of those respected openings, man. I'm telling you, but we're going to dive deeper into that later on in the video. For now, I wanted to start with the thing that kicked all of this off. After we hired Bob Myers and Rob Spielman, while I'm literally trying to just get my notes together to put that video together and record that and stuff, I'm still working on the Ron Rivera got fired video and stuff like that. I see that the Washington Commanders have now shown strong interest in Michigan, currently Michigan head coach, who has a championship game to play tonight. We've reached out to his agent and we're strongly interested in bringing him in potentially as a head coach right now. The exact quote was, Commanders showing significant interest in hiring Michigan coach Jim Harbaugh. He's one of the top names in the coaching carousel, and the Washington Commanders are confirmed interested right now. We even reached out to his agent, Bob Myers, who we just announced as part of our advisory board to build this team the right way. He's coming from the Warriors. I did a whole breakdown on Bob Myers and Rick Spielman. I'm gonna reference them a lot in this video. If you don't exactly know who those guys are, again, I did a full breakdown on who they are, what they've done in their previous stints of other places, and what they're going to do and contribute for the Washington Commanders, how they're going to contribute to us becoming a Super Bowl contender. Well, Bob Myers, first day being announced as part of this team as a strong advisor and a heavy influence who we're going to bring in as GM and head coach, he's already reached out to Jim Harbaugh is my fault, agent, Don Yee. He's already out there putting in work right now. And then a lot of the guys that we're going to talk about in this video where we've already requested interviews, we don't exactly know who did it, but we know that Bob Myers is one of the guys that's already reached out to Jim Harbaugh's agents. He's already putting in his work. And just to let you know, Harbaugh will technically be available after tonight, whether he wins or loses this college football national championship tonight. I mean, as of technically like 1 a.m., he's available for an interview if he wants to come in and do it. But technically, like, because I know a lot of people were wondering as far as like the rules go, NFL interview dates and stuff like that. From what I'm seeing, he can literally be interviewed in person as of tomorrow if he wants to do it. But I know Michigan's been doing everything that they can to try to keep him and stuff like that. But it's definitely looking like he's possibly going somewhere in the NFL, whether it's us, the Raiders, Chargers, whoever. And we'll talk about that soon. But hey, man, I'm super excited, man. I mean, in Jim Harbaugh's case, we don't have to wait as long as like a lot of the top candidates like Mike McDonald and Bobby Slowick and Ben Johnson. Both of those guys are in the NFL playoffs. So we have to wait on those guys. So like if we say, for example, if we really want Jim Harbaugh, and say, for example, we just really want him to be our head coach, he's our number 1 candidate on the list or something like that, then we can go ahead and hire him like really soon. We would probably hire him before we even get a chance to interview the other guys, because again, the other guys have playoff games to worry about this next week, and maybe some of those guys will probably win playoff games, and then the Ravens are on a bye week, so we have to wait at the very least for 2 weeks before we can talk to those guys. And then who knows what rules are set in place to where we may have to wait even longer. But Jim Harbaugh coming from college, we can interview him immediately. But there have been several reports that Josh Harris and now this team of recently hired advisors and stuff will definitely hire a GM first and then a head coach afterwards. So unless we hire a GM today, don't expect for us to hire Jim Harbaugh anytime soon, especially not tomorrow or anything like that. The GM comes first and the head coach comes afterwards. So you will not see a headline saying the Commanders have hired such and such a head coach until you see the Commanders have hired such and such as GM or head of football operations, whatever you want to call it. So just to go ahead and give y'all heads up there, even though Jim Harbaugh is going to probably be the first head coach that we interview, doesn't really matter because we got to bring in the GM first. So I don't think we'll even interview Jim Harbaugh until after we hire that GM, which may not happen today, may not happen tomorrow, may not even happen this week. We'll see. But just to let you know, I love Jim Harbaugh. My top 3 is still Ben Johnson, Mike McDonald, and Bobby Slowick, honestly. But Jim Harbaugh is up there, dog. Let's not ignore that. I mean, my boy Real Robinson put it perfectly. Jim Harbaugh doesn't necessarily fit the age and the upside trait I desire in pursuit of a next head coach. but he would be a home run hire for Josh Harris and company. He honestly would be. He's a phenomenal coach and leader, and our annual floor becomes immediately higher under him. But if we hire him as head coach, he's only doing the head coaching stuff. No more coach-centric model, and we're going away from that. We're bringing in a GM/football operations guy. We may bring in an additional guy to be like vice president of football operations, GM, whatever. The head coach will only head coach. All of that personnel stuff, all of that draft, free agency stuff, no more. You're here to head coach, and that is absolutely it. That's literally it. Shouts out my boy, Real Robinson, for bringing up those great points as well, and we're going to dive a little bit more into that as well. Shouts out my boy, Burgundy Blog, because he brought up the point that rumor mill is finna go crazy, but as for Harbaugh, you can sure do a lot worse. Insanely competitive, and he wins literally everywhere. I mean, look at Michigan in the national championship right now over my Georgia Bulldogs, over Alabama. They directly beat Alabama to prove that they deserve to be there. Man, hey, and they don't have anywhere near as much talent as a lot of the teams they beat, including like Alabama over Georgia. You can even argue like over like Texas and guys like that. You could argue they have less talent than those guys and still go out there and do what they've done. Isn't it very impressive job by Jim Harbaugh and makes him even more wanted? I mean, the fact that he had the great stint that he had with the 49ers when he was last in the NFL, this is a very wanted guy. And I'm gonna let you know now, if you want to go defensive-minded head coach, you have to hit on offensive coordinator, though. I'm going to say this over and over again. When we're talking about head coaching searches and we're talking about potential defensive-minded head coaches being that guy, I want to preface with the fact that if you hire a defensive-minded head coach in this passing league, you have to get offensive coordinator right. You can't just avoid getting the offensive coordinator right. Look at what the Texans are doing with Bobby Slowick. Look at what the Ravens are doing with my Georgia Bulldog, Todd Monken. Those are just two examples off the top of my head. You have to hit an offensive coordinator. You got to. But at the same time, you still got to be careful, because just like how a lot of us want Bobby Slowick as our head coach, or another young offensive coordinator like a Ben Johnson as our head coach, you got to worry about the fact that people are going to try to poach him away from you. So not only do you have to hit on the offensive coordinator once, like right now, this time, you're going to have to probably do it over and over again. So if you're thinking about Jim Harbaugh, you're thinking about Mike Tomlin, or any defensive-minded head coach, or even the Lions defensive coordinator, who we're going to talk about soon because we've already requested to interview him along with offensive coordinator from the same team, the Lions, Ben Johnson. If you're going to hire one of those defensive-minded head coaches, you got to think about the fact that you're going to have to consistently hit on a good offensive coordinator over and over again, because teams are going to constantly try to pry him, steal him away, and try to give him a promotion, more power, and more money. So when you go defensive-minded head coach, you don't only have to just hit on offensive coordinator once. You're going to have to keep doing it over and over again. You're going to have to find the next guy and the next guy, because he's more than likely going to leave for a better job. I mean, maybe there's a situation where like Ben Johnson stayed with the Lions for another year, but that was only delayed 1 year. Or the passing game coordinator over there with the Dolphins, he stayed another year. Maybe he stays again, but I know teams are trying to get him and make them the next offensive coordinator or head coach for their team. You just never know, man. It's ugly. So when it comes to Jim Harbaugh, though, I think it's quite likely that he probably lands with the Chargers or Raiders. I mean, the Raiders situation is being reported by several sources right now that their head coaching job is only between two people. It's a two-man race, Antonio Pierce and Jim Harbaugh. That's it. So, hey, man, there's heavy competition out there for Jim Harbaugh for reasons I've already stated, but it's not just Jim Harbaugh. I wanted to talk and dive into him a little bit more than the other guys because I haven't had a chance to talk about him. I already did like a Ben Johnson video already like a couple of weeks ago, and I'll probably do another one. But now to talk about all of the names that we've been linked to so far already. I'm super excited, man. We've already requested interviews for Lions defensive coordinator Ben Johnson and defensive coordinator Aaron Glenn, both from the Lions already. Super excited about that. And shouts out my boy Mark Bullock over there from the UK. Go subscribe to his Substack because he does great work. He does film sessions on everything. He did like a film session on Emmanuel Forbes or Sam Howell and whether we should keep him as a franchise quarterback or not, or we should draft the guy, all of that type of stuff. And he did a full breakdown of Ben Johnson's offense. It's a beautiful article. He literally has like clips and uses examples and plays and has all 22 footage in it. If you haven't done that, please go subscribe to him. It's worth every penny. But his conclusion, he said there's a lot more to being a head coach than just the system you're installing. But Johnson does have a great system and has shown great flexibility to adjust his offense to his specific personnel and find ways to build individualized packages for his best players and intertwine those packages together to really stress opposing defenses. If Johnson were to end up as the next head coach of the Commanders, provided he can prove his leadership capabilities and his ability to connect with players, those are the only question marks, then his scheme would be one I'd be hugely excited to see in a Washington over the next few years. So when it comes to system, when it comes to running an offense, there are no questions with Ben Johnson. None at all. I mean, this guy here is not playing. I mean, just think about it. This boy Ben Johnson right now almost had 2 running backs run for 1,000 yards, and yet his quarterback had somewhere around 4,400 yards. Like, that is crazy. That is the most explosive offense doing it. Again, when I did some Ben Johnson breakdowns, I believe I brought up some stats at where they rank in an offense in terms of offense. And when I do another Ben Johnson video, I'm gonna break that down. I'm not gonna do that now because this video is gonna last forever if we do that for everybody. But just know Ben Johnson's doing a great job right now. So far, Jim Harbaugh, Ben Johnson, Aaron Glenn, all as potential head coaching candidates. And also, speaking of Ben Johnson, Rick Spielman's brother, who we just hired today, well, Rick Spielman, we just hired today, but his brother, Chris, is in a similar role with Detroit right now. So maybe there's a connection to Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn that way, right there. And also, Martin Mayhew used to be the GM for the Lions. Maybe there's a connection there as well. Maybe that's the only reason he's still here right now. But again, I already told y'all that's more than likely temporary. He's probably gone as soon as we hire the next GM and stuff like that. Speaking of next GMs, we've already reportedly requested to interview Glenn Cook, the Browns assistant GM, and Ian Cunningham, the Bears assistant GM, who was arguably the top GM candidate out there, at the very least one of the top 3, top 5 at worst. So I love Ian Cunningham. Again, I'm doing a separate video on GM candidates. I will do a deep dive into why Ian Cunningham is so sought after. Y'all should be extremely excited to hear his name in the mix. And then we also requested to interview LA Rams defensive coordinator Raheem Morris. And that's really interesting because he's already been a coach for the Washington Commanders before. So this is going to be really, really interesting if he circles back. He's not one of my top candidates, but I do feel like he is pretty underrated, and the job he's done as a defensive coordinator for the Rams does need to be applauded. Then we also requested permission to interview Ravens associate head coach and defensive lines coach Anthony Weaver for the next head coaching job. So watch out for that. Also, we requested permission to interview Chiefs assistant GM Mike Borgonzi, I think that's how you pronounce that, for the general manager job as well. So you have some Chiefs in there, some guys that have helped build the Chiefs to what they are now. We've requested permission to interview 49ers assistant GM Adam Peters, arguably the top candidate along with Ian Cunningham at worst top 3, top 5 candidates out there. Super excited about that. Then the next name, and then also with Adam Peters, before we move on, and again, I'm gonna do a separate thing on there, but I mean, he even received a lot of praise in a recent NFL agent survey. When they interviewed a bunch of NFL agents, Adam Peters was one of the most highly talked about, most highly regarded names up there. One quote said, "Good, bad, or ugly, Adam Peters does it the right way. He treats people with compassion, even when it's a bad situation. He's always honest. You know where you stand." I'm surprised he has not gotten a general manager job to this point. I think that if you're a team looking this year, to put it bluntly, you would be dumb to look anywhere else. I think he is the best in the business, unquote. And these are from anonymous NFL agents out there. And you know, if you have NFL agents on your side, that makes you a top free agency destination automatically, because these agents control a lot of what happens behind the scenes as far as where NFL players want to go. So say if you're the type of Commanders fan that wants us to go full deep dive into getting some top free agents in certain positions like edge rusher Brian Burns or Josh Allen, or linebacker maybe like a Bobby Wagner, Patrick Queen or something, or even receiver like a Mike Evans, anything like that, or top offensive lineman talent out there, this is the guy, Adam Peters. If he's like the winner when it comes to NFL free agents, he's the guy the NFL free agents hold to a very high regard, to a very high standard. He's the guy that they love. That only helps our chances at landing those guys. So that's why a guy like Adam Peters, or even Ian Cunningham, who wasn't mentioned in that exact survey right there, is one of the top guys according to NFL agents. that's still a thing, man. That really matters. So Adam Peters is one of my top 3 candidates, arguably my number 1 candidate, and that's one of the main reasons. Then we went out and requested an interview for assistant Eagles GM Alec Halaby, another arguably top 3, top 5 candidate out there, man. Come on, dog. We are not playing. Remember, this is Howie Roseman's numbers guy. And Howie Roseman, in that same NFL agent survey, and Howie Roseman was one of the guys that was brought up as he was voted one of the top GMs overall right now. Like out of 23 guys that were surveyed, NFL agents, Howie Roseman won with 10. Brett Veach from the Chiefs was second place with only 4. Like as far as guys that are already GMs. Adam Peters doesn't count because again he's an assistant GM, he's not included in that, but NFL agents absolutely love him and feel like he should be the next GM hired and he could be up there with Howie Roseman. But when it comes to Howie Roseman, he's voted by NFL agents the best GM by far in the NFL, right? And then again, your guy Alec Halaby is his numbers guy. He's the guy crunching the numbers for him, doing a great job. So the reason Howie Roseman is so great, Alec Halaby has a lot to do with that. And you've seen how the Eagles know, even though the wheels have kind of fallen off lately, we'll see what they do in the playoffs. But Alec Halaby, I feel like, has done a great job contributing to what the Eagles have done and them being in the Super Bowl last year and stuff like that. So arguably my top 3 GM candidate potential guys, we've already requested to interview all of those guys, and I hope we land at least one of them. I'm super excited. Now, from that list, what we already have, the only people I will add, truly, that I'm like, man, make sure you at least talk to these guys. You got Joe Hortiz, I think that's how you pronounce that, from the Ravens. You got who's a potential GM candidate, and then you also have Ravens defensive coordinator Mike McDonald and Texans offensive coordinator Bobby Slowick. Those are like the only last 3 names I feel like we gotta throw in there, man. You got to at least throw those names out there. And so far from requested GM and head coaching interviews, we're requesting from teams that are the Bears, the Chiefs, the 49ers, the Ravens, the Lions, and the Rams. All of those teams but the Bears are current playoff teams. And again, Ian Cunningham from the Bears is one of the top candidates, even though the Bears haven't been that good this season. They missed the playoffs, but they beat the Lions. They beat the Lions once and almost beat them twice. Ian Cunningham has a lot to do with that. So, hey, man, I'm telling you right now, we are doing this the right way. Y'all should be super duper excited, man. I don't even know how to put it into words, man. Just as a Burgundy and Gold fan, forget me being a YouTuber or anything, just being a Burgundy and Gold fan, I feel like a kid in a candy store right now, man, because I really feel like we're doing everything the right way, man. The fact that we're interviewing guys, head coaching and GM wise, from all playoff teams except for the Bears, and then the Bears actually surpassed a lot of people's expectations, especially with Justin Fields being hurt a lot of the year, and they beat one of the best teams in the NFC, their direct rival, the Lions, once, and should have beat them twice. I'm telling y'all, man, that's Ian Cunningham who's responsible for that. Largely responsible for it. I'm telling you, man, I'm super excited. And shouts out my boy Commander's Realm, because he brought up, he said, man, they could interview the Ravens head janitor and I'd be happy with it. That's why I bring up the point that we're interviewing people from successful teams right now, because the Ravens look like the best team in the NFL, and I want us to add their defensive coordinator and GM guy in there right now, but we're already interviewing other people from the organization so far. Hopefully we add more to that list. But yeah, man, I mean, the head janitor, bring everybody with you. Interview anybody that has anything to do with the Ravens' success right now. I mean, if we go defensive-minded head coach, see if we can take Todd Monken from him as our offensive coordinator. I would be super happy as a Georgia Bulldog fan. But you see what they're doing with Lamar Jackson. Imagine if we were to get like a guy like Jaden Daniels or Caleb Williams or something, what Todd Monken can do with them. Because this is Lamar Jackson having arguably one of his best seasons of his career. Seems like he's right back to where he was supposed to be, and I give Todd Monken a lot of credit for that, man. A lot of credit for that. Now, let me go ahead and add to the fact that I do truly believe we are not only a top landing spot, but we are the top landing spot for these potential GMs and head coaches that we're interviewing. First of all of those assistant GMs are itching to get their chance to be the GM, the real GM, not the assistant GM, the GM, and prove to everybody that they are the genius and can run the whole operation themselves, run their entire show on their own. And then on top of that, you get to start off with the team building capital that we have. We have the 2nd, 36th, and 40th pick in this upcoming draft. 3 top 40 picks, And then we also have 6 picks in the top 100, 2 picks, 5 in the top 100, but 6 in the, we're going to go 102 picks, and the Commanders potentially could pick 6 times. That's incredible, man. I mean, you could come in and immediate have just crazy draft and have an immediate impact on this organization, man. And then on top of that, we have the most cap space in the NFL, and also on top of that, plenty of ways to get even more. And I already did a full breakdown on that a few days ago, so if you want to find out how we can get from where we currently are in the 80 millions in cap space, which is again the most in the NFL, number one most cap space in the NFL, we can potentially get up to 120 million if you really want to. So the new GM and head coaching pairing can come in and have an immediate impact on this team, immediately leave an imprint. This is going to feel like this team. It won't feel like a Dan Snyder team. It won't feel like a Ron Rivera team. With the draft capital and the cap space that we have right now, it can immediately feel like their team. Year one, regular season, week 1 of 2024. Literally. I'm super excited, man. We have the most capital for a new regime to work with, to come in and work with immediately. I mean, the Bears have 2 top 9 picks, but they don't have the cap space that we have. I mean, and you know, having the number 1 overall pick, that's great too. I feel like if the Bears are number 1, we have to be number 2 in destinations for a GM and a head coach. I'm telling you right now. But at the same time, they're not on the lookout for those things. So I think we're pretty good to go. I mean, they probably are looking for a head coach, more than likely, but we'll see. I feel like at the very least, we're top 2 in landing spots for a GM and a head coach, man. I'm super excited. And I think this new regime has all of the capital. Whoever comes in as head coach and GM has all of the capital and resources to go from 2nd overall pick to the playoffs, just like the Texans just did. And if you want the offensive coordinator that put that together to be our next head coach and Bobby Slowick, go ahead and do that if you want to. I'm cool with that. And then on top of all of that, just the statement that Bob Myers put out after we announced his hiring, man. I mean, there's so many quotes, and I broke this all the way down in my Bob Myers hire video. But just to reiterate what I said in that video, he said, "I've been fortunate to know Josh Harris for many years, and his commitment to building a championship caliber team is what drew me here. In my experience, championship infrastructure begins with a strong ownership group that prioritizes culture and invests in attracting the industry's most talented and innovative leaders." In speaking with Josh and his team, it's clear they will do everything it takes to build out a world-class organization, and one that can win on the field and make a positive mark in the DMV community. This is the type of opportunity that really inspires me, and I look forward to contributing to the next chapter of this storied franchise. But he's not the only one, because we also brought in Rick Spielman, and he said some really interesting things as well. He said Josh and his partners are willing to invest their time, energy, and resources to build this franchise the right way without cutting corners. And that is critical as you approach an important offseason like the one in front of us. I am thrilled to apply my experience in the NFL and collaborate with Josh, Bob, and the ownership group to identify the best leaders to guide the Commanders forward. I'm super excited. Shouts out my boy Dave Scarangella. I think that's how you pronounce that on Twitter. He brought up a great point. He said, quote, "I'm impressed with how Josh Harris is starting out the search for a new coach. He didn't punt it to a consulting firm, but hired people he trusted to screen all of the possibilities and protect himself from just reaching out to friends and acquaintances. People may not like the eventual choice, but this is being run like a business, not a fantasy football operation like the previous owner and Dan Snyder." Great point. And my boy Burgundy and Blog brought up another point. This process is going to be extremely nerdy, and I'm here for it. I completely agree. Let's nerd it up. Also, man, I love the fact that this is not being run by a couple of guys on a yacht just throwing darts and just making decisions for whatever reason whatsoever. Also, really interesting news nugget right here. Shouts out to Deanna Rossini. She pointed out Washington is making a big statement. They want fans to see they are casting a very wide open net, but on the contrary, just now texted with another team looking for a head coach, and they told me they won't be leaking their names until interviews are complete. So we're doing it completely out. We want everybody to know, hey, man, we're talking to all of the top guys. Come rock with us, man. This is the time to be excited. And, hey, man, there's 2 different ways to do it. I love the way we're doing it, and it's according to sources, it's the Titans that are going about it in a more secretive way. They're the exact antithesis as to what the way we're going about this, and I'm not mad at them, but I love the way we're doing it, because as a fan, I am super excited. Shouts out to Christian Williams for bringing up this point on Twitter as well. The Commanders bringing on Bob Myers and Rick Spielman indicates to me they're going to go huge. I won't be shocked if they pay top dollar for Ben Johnson and Jim Harbaugh and trade up to the first overall to take Caleb Williams. Spielman is a huge fan of Caleb, if I remember correctly. Rick Spielman, I think, has been reportedly very attached to Caleb Williams. And hey, man, we're probably not just going to go huge with hires, but like my dog just said, we're probably going to go huge on the draft as well. Because, according to NBC Sports' Peter King, he expects Bears GM Ryan Poles to trade the #1 pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, and they may actually lean towards sticking with Justin Fields. And so, we may be able to trade up to that #1 overall pick. That's a possibility. Whether you want to or not, I'm not here to debate that, but I'm just very excited about the fact that there is a chance that we could get aggressive. And remember, Josh Harris is the same guy that traded up to the #1 overall pick in the NBA, though, to get Markelle Fultz. Now, that didn't work out too well for them, but still, the fact that he's not afraid is huge. I'm super excited. What a time to be a Commanders fan. Again, we have every top candidate I dreamed of us potentially bringing in. All you literally just got to add is Joe Hortiz, however you pronounce his name, for the Ravens, Mike McDonald for the Ravens, and Bobby Slowick of the Texans. And then we literally have all the names I potentially wanted in there. Now, again, I'm working on specific videos for GM candidates and head coaching candidates. So I'm diving deeper to maybe find some sleepers in there that I'll report on and break down, do their history and everything they could potentially bring to the Commanders. But as far as like the obvious top guys that like everybody's fighting for, the fact that we've already requested interviews for all of those guys, super excited, man. That shows that this organization knows who to look at, and they're looking for talent. And remember, don't forget, I'm gonna keep mentioning this in several videos and live streams, and I already have in several videos and live streams, but just to let you know, when Josh Harris went to that GM summit, the situation where it was like owners get to meet potential GMs and all of that type of stuff, there were like 42 top GM candidates there. Apparently, Joe Harris and David Tepper were the most active, the most aggressive, and made the biggest impression on all of those top GM candidates. And when it's only you and David Tepper being compared in any way, you automatically look better. So I would say Josh Harris is probably the most sought after owner right now for potential top GM candidates, because David Tepper is looking like the next Dan Snyder potentially. He's awful. So we're just sitting there alone at the top, the king of the hill, as the place that top GM candidates are fighting to go be a GM for. So I'm super excited, man. I think it's not even us fighting for these top GM candidates and top head coaching candidates. I think if anything, they'll be fighting and competing against each other to come work for us. Super excited. But yeah, man, that's the end of this video. Please get in the comment section. Let me know how you feel about all of this I discussed in this video. I know it's a handful. I know it's a lot. And I know I probably went on a couple of more rants than I should have, but I'm just super excited. Let me know in the comment section how excited you are. Let me know your opinion on all of these names I mentioned. If your preference is Jim Harbaugh, Ben Johnson, or any of those guys, and let me know Adam Peters, Alec Halaby, or Ian Cunningham at GM, all of those guys. Let me know how you feel about all of that, of course. And again, like I already said before the intro, I have so much content to work on. So make sure you stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, and the bell next to that, so you get a notification and you're completely up to date every time I release all of these type of videos, because any little thing that happens, I'm doing a video on it. I'm also going to try to project some things. We're going to break down a lot of things. I'm super duper excited, man. Make sure y'all stay tuned. Again, let me know in the comment section how you feel about everything. I'm going to catch y'all later. I'm out.